I spoke with attorney Mary FioRito, the Ethics and Public Policy Center's Cardinal Francis George Fellow, about these rulings. Mary, thank you so much for joining us today. This case is moving so quickly, and it's a very hot button issue for a lot of people. The Biden administration is taking this case to the Supreme Court. What can we expect from them?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the court does here, Montse, because they've indicated that they really don't like particular cases or jurisdictions being rushed to what's called their, emergency docket. They tend to want to let things play out in the lower courts to be able to not only allow democracy to work, right, for the people to be able to weigh in on things and for their elected representatives to be able to grapple with some of these issues, but also to allow for additional fact-finding and discovery. Both Judge Kaczmarek's decision and the decision that came from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals make a number of different statements about the medical risks and some of the safety issues that are inherent with this mifepristone and misoprostol combination of drugs. And those are incidents that are going to need to be looked at in greater detail, because in 2016, what the FDA did was not to require any abortion provider to report any adverse effect of the abortion pill on any of their patients unless it resulted in death. And so we have about 8 years of no information other than deaths, as tragic as those are. But as we know from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and also it was mentioned in Judge Kaczmarek's decision, that there are women who present in the emergency room with significant injury and damage, and those aren't reported anymore. So what that Fifth Circuit decision did was to say, no, we've got to start reporting these adverse effects, even if they don't result in death.
And
so
Mary,
it will be interesting. Yeah.
We'll get into that in a second, but let's walk some of this back. FDA approvals for drugs and protocols, they play a significant role in the access that American citizens have to certain drugs. Why did the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine and the other plaintiffs have a stake in this case? Why did this worry them so much?
Right. Well, back in the year 2000, when the mifepristone, which was then called commonly RU46, was approved, the FDA did that with an accelerated approval mechanism. And accelerated approval, it's sort of like an emergency motion that is made before the FDA in order to help people access drugs for life-threatening conditions. And pregnancy was defined then as a life-threatening condition, which simply isn't true. And so the drug didn't go through all of the normal testing protocols. It went through this accelerated approval status hearing, and it was approved. This was in the very final months of the Clinton administration, and this was very important to the Clinton administration to get this pill approved without any obstacles whatsoever. And it has taken 2 decades of different doctors and associations of physicians bringing concerns back before the FDA, and the FDA has really been stonewalling them. And in order to allow the pill just to kind of be given out, and now we see after COVID by mail and by non-doctors.
And Mary, so, what are those concerns?
Right. Well, there's a number of different concerns that was raised by the plaintiffs in this case. The Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, which is an umbrella group of different physicians, all of whom have practices that are touched by pregnant women and women who are undergoing a termination of a pregnancy. So it includes the American College of Pediatricians, the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs, and also emergency room doctors in their individual capacities as emergency room doctors, because they are often the ones who are treating women who come in with these complications. And the particular complications that they are seeing are excessive bleeding. Sometimes the baby's body does not pass. I'm sorry to be graphic, but that's what happens. The baby's body is not passed, and a woman can develop sepsis. If a woman has an ectopic pregnancy and an ultrasound is not performed on her before these pills are given, she can die, Montse, from taking these pills. It goes into the trauma that is caused to the emergency room doctor and the staff some of whom have moral and other objections to performing abortions, and they are then forced into, in an emergency room situation, into completing an abortion for an abortionist who didn't do it the right way and who left a woman dying, essentially.
Now, Mary, there are governors who are taking the issue into their own hands. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey said her state is stockpiling mifepristone. What are the consequences for ignoring court rulings should these pills be outlawed in the future?
Well, as of today, the 17 Democratic governors who brought a lawsuit to a federal jurisdiction as well have an opinion from Judge Thomas Wright in Washington state that permits these Democratic governors in these 17 states to continue to prescribe and to give out the abortion pill to people who come to their states for abortions. But that affects only those 17 states, whereas Judge Kaczmarek's decision and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals decision apply to the whole country. So even within those 17 states, they'll have to go back to the 2016 FDA protocol, which required a number of safety protections that have not been operative for the last 8 years. Those are making certain that any non-fatal adverse consequences, health consequences that women experience are reported to the FDA. Up until for the last 8 years, they've only had to report a situation where a woman actually dies. They don't have to report fatalities, and they don't have to report any other emergency room visits or visits back to the doctor. They have shortened the time that the pill may be used from 70 days, which is about 10 weeks, to 49 days. And there's quite a bit of fetal development that goes on in those 3 weeks between week 7 and week 10. You're dealing with a much larger unborn child at that point. So they've reduced the number back down to 7 weeks. They are requiring that doctors actually prescribe. And for the last 8 years, we have allowed nurse midwives and other non-physicians to prescribe the abortion pill. That's going to change as an additional safety precaution for women. And again, the reporting requirements, reducing the age, all of those are going to at least put some kind of, not necessarily restrictions, but will put a few guardrails around those Democratic states that are so eager to be promoting abortion at every turn.
And it'll create a safety net for women. Well, Mary, we're watching this closely, and we will be following up with you as this makes its way through the courts. Thank you.
I look forward to it. Thank you for having me.